One. Hey everybody, it's Drew from the Drewsperience. I've been late with this announcement, but it's coming soon. So make sure to hit the like, share, subscribe button if you love combat sports content, Canadian political content as we're entering the realm, and also JRPGs and anime, because I'm a big otaku. So the like, share, subscribe button, it takes 3 seconds. It's free. I don't want money. I just trying to get my channel to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. But with politics, because it's the sport that never ends. It's 24/7. Today, I'm joined by one of the greatest. I think he's done it for a decade, actually, it turns out, but he's the voice of Gen Z Canadian conservatism, but fluently bilingual, has some of the best posts on social, so you better make sure to follow him. He's the one, the only. Look how well dressed he is. Elie Cantin Nantel. Welcome to the show, Ellie.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's my pleasure.
Well, you're very good at what you do, man. Like I
Thank
started
you.
watching your stuff and reading your stuff on X, and it came across my timeline in the election. I was thinking, like, wow, this guy's actually this is the future's bright. Like you, like are really you're very well versed. So I have to ask, like, what got you to be a conservative, and what led to taking up politics?
Well, it was Justin Trudeau. It was the fact that just I saw pretty early on that Justin Trudeau was about to ruin our country. So here's the thing. I actually, and I hate to brag about this because it's actually horrible. When Justin Trudeau was elected in 2016, sorry, 2015, but it was in 2016 that I started to notice these trends. I would have been maybe 14, 15 years old. I started to notice, hey, this guy doesn't have a good vision for Canada. Because what
Hmm.
was he doing? He was allowing in tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of refugees into
Hmm.
Canada from countries where there was a high amount of terrorism
Hmm.
and with very little vetting. And he was saying, "Oh, this is our strength. This is good." He was starting to spend a lot of money, adding more debt to the Canadian economy. He was going all in on the gender ideology. I mean, Trudeau was the OG gender ideologue. He was on gender ideology before anybody
Hmm.
else. And he was all on the drug liberalization front. I mean, legalizing marijuana was why he won in 2015. He managed to get all of the people off their couches and go to over that. And look, some people I know use it for health reasons. I'm not going to judge anybody, but that was something that he decided to do. And I was just seeing again and again and again, okay, here is this guy that has an agenda that is just not an agenda that I think will end well. And there were people at the time that were like, oh, don't worry, it's going to be fine. And how does it turn out 10 years later? We have a problem with pro-Hamas radicals in our street. A large number of these people appear to have not been uh, aren't native Canadians. We have a problem with debt that is now we're spending $50 billion a year on interest alone for our debt.
Hmm.
We have drugs everywhere, and not just marijuana, but the decriminalization of hard drugs in BC, which ended up being an absolute failed experiment. We're becoming the laughing stock of the world when it comes to gender ideology. So all of these things end up being proven right. But what made me a conservative was just at first seeing how just disastrous every single Trudeau policy was sounding, and then looking south of the border and seeing Donald Trump, that speech that he gave at his inauguration, when he talked about putting America first, when he talked about returning the country to the people, when he talked about restoring common sense, that was just such a striking difference in vision. Here you had one person who was literally a Nepo baby. The only reason why he was prime minister is because his daddy was named Trudeau, who was coming in with all of these awful ideas that I thought were about to completely ruin the country. And on the other hand, you had somebody, one of the greatest business people in the world, ran a revolutionary campaign, won places where nobody thought he would win, and he was running to return the power to the people. He was running with a brand new type of conservatism, a lot of common sense, and his policies were working. I mean, the economy was doing very well in his first term. The illegal immigration had gone down. There was a lot of good things that were happening. So seeing those two contrasts early on made me realize, well, I actually agree a lot with conservative philosophy. And from that, I ended up going and joining the Conservative Party here in Canada and being involved in that. I worked for a Conservative MP. And then I decided, I actually like to talk. And when you're a staffer, you can't talk a lot because you can't speak on behalf of the party.
Hmm.
The leader and the MP speak on behalf of the party. So I ventured into conservative media and I have been doing conservative media for 5 years now.
That's epic. And you're really representing a new voice of the generation. I mean, I'm a millennial, so for us, it's more about affordability. And obviously, I would say too, like with the crime, as you said, drugs. And I think we learned our lesson. I mean, look, I mean, I voted. I mean, I've never voted liberal. I'll never vote liberal because I'll tell you off the record after. But I'm a lifelong conservative. Like I just got my 5-year membership card physical in the mail finally. So will say this: I will be at Calgary in January for the leadership review. I just spoke with my EDA, and I think that's the best thing you could do. No matter how, I think it begins at 14. The younger you
Yes.
are, the better you're gonna learn. It looks
I
nerdy.
joined at 14.
You
You
have
can
to.
you can join at 14. I mean, you can join at 114 if you want to as well. I mean, anyone any age should absolutely get involved here.
I think it makes you appreciate and helps you understand the system of like how government works, why we're different from the US, why we are a Westminster system, which I
Yes.
still think is a great system. I like it a lot because it makes more sense to me because I lived
Yeah.
in Canada. But I think we have to find a way to make politics like cool, and I think we're seeing that. I have to ask, obviously the last election happened. It was my foray. Actually, I used to be a political junkie when I was telling you before we recorded. I lost interest, but then I came back and I helped my candidate in Mount Royal, and it really launched like and opened a new door for me because my normal niche is combat sports, but combat sports like boxing, kickboxing, UFC, it's similar to karate, it's similar to politics. It's an arena. One's intellectual, one's physical. What was your experience in the last election? Because I know you're from Quebec, but you live in Ontario, right?
Yes. Well, the last election I was working for an organization called The Hub. They were kind of a news commentary site,
Hmm.
and I was covering the election. So I didn't really have a personal stake in it. And
Okay.
honestly, like having worked in politics, you kind of just realize that it's, after a couple elections, you kind of lose the passion. I mean, I was a big fan of Pierre Polyev. I was
Mhm.
really hoping he was going to win. I voted for Pierre Polyev.
Me
My
too.
younger brother voted for Pierre Polyev, and I'm unafraid to say that, and I support him staying on as leader. But I was more interested in covering what was going on in Canada, so
Hmm.
that's what I did. I had a flight pass. I got to travel across the country to do that. I got to go to the leaders' debate, which I thought was going to be a really cool experience, but actually ended up turning into a complete gong show, and that was a whole story during the election. If you didn't catch that, I would highly recommend you go on Google and look up leaders debates Rebel News, and you'll find
Oh
everything that
no, I
happened
remember
there.
that.
And
Yeah.
I was in the room when that happened. So that's kind of what I did during the election. What I took away from the election is that Canada seems to have just seems to be fond of re-electing bad governments. Because to be honest, Justin Trudeau should have not been re-elected in 2019. It was the worst first-year term of any prime minister. He had no prime minister, listen to this, no prime minister had ever broken the ethics laws, and he did it twice in one term,
Hmm.
and he deserved to be fired, and yet he was reelected. Then came 2021, and after an absolute disastrous pandemic management, one of the worst that I've ever seen, where he spent into oblivion, and then decided to run the most hateful campaign I've ever seen in my life, dividing Canadians based on vaccination status. In 2015, Justin Trudeau said that his biggest fear was polarization, division, and hatred. And
And
in
he stoked it.
2021, he became what he previously said he feared the most. He
Hmm.
divided Canadians. He called the unvaccinated those people. And you would have thought that Canadians would have seen through the hate, through the division, and told them no, no, and then said no. They reelected him again. And so we're at this third election win now. Even 2015, he wasn't very impressive. I thought Thomas Mulcair, if you didn't want Stephen Harper, I would have preferred Stephen Harper. I thought Thomas Mulcair was more impressive. And then here comes 2025. Okay, we have 10 years. Every single metric possible is worse off. Like there is not a single metric that is better off objectively. Again, I've been doing this as a journalist. I've just been looking at all the metrics: housing, crime, immigration, the infrastructure that we're dealing with. Everything was just not going well. And it seemed like it was time for a change. And instead, what did they do? They elect Trudeau's economic advisor because they thought that this guy would stand up to Donald Trump. The same man who moved his company headquarters from Toronto to the United States. The same man who has opposed Canadian energy while supporting energy abroad. That somehow this man who left Canada for the United Kingdom, who called himself a European, who called himself a globalist, was somehow going to be the great Canadian leader that was going to stand up to Donald Trump and get us a deal. And therefore, we should re-elect the Liberals, including Chrystia Freeland, who is now thankfully stepped aside. We should re-elect Sean Fraser. We should re-elect the whole crew because now they will get it. And turns out Carney is not very good at getting deals. So my big takeaway from this election is, people have been criticizing Pierre Poilievre a lot. And look, I think there were some mistakes in that campaign. I wrote some columns about some of those mistakes in the
Hmm.
campaign. But there's a fundamental problem in Canada where Canadians are just re-electing bad governments again and again and again. And I do think our legacy media, much of which is receiving subsidies today from the government, is part of the problem.
Very true. I like what you said there. Like we do have a problem too. Like because you said there was some bad management decisions on the campaign. I was witness to it too with my candidate at times. Like I couldn't get an interview with them until only now. It was very the muzzling for social media, not social media, but like media. It really hurt. It really hurt. And it's like at least they realize now. But it's I still think look, I do believe if Pierre can, I don't think Pierre has to come to the center. I think Pierre just has to do what works best, at least recording the young vote. But I want to ask you, because you're Gen Z. We just
Yes.
had the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and
Hmm.
it's this big problem of not having an exchange of ideas of but
It
different
is.
sides. When you go to Canadian universities, Ali, what is the atmosphere like? I mean, I could say from McGill and Concordia, what you saw on the news, it's a gong show, like
It's
with a capital G.
horrible.
But
It's horrible.
what's it like for conservatives now? Because when I was in college, university, we didn't have this. Like we were like, it's like whatever. It's like Harper's the
Yeah.
PM, but we'll get along. We'll agree to disagree.
Yeah, well, so my experience on university campus
Hmm.
does differ from your typical student in Canada, and that's because I'm in a bilingual program.
Yeah.
That's because I have Francophone professors. And at the University of Ottawa, what's very interesting is that the Francophone professors, many of them are on the left, but they are the French left. The French left is not woke. So the French left does not believe in this oppressor-oppressed dynamic. All of this stuff, the white privilege, the needing of censoring people's safe spaces, all of this is really all from the United States. It's an American ideology, and it creeped up into the Anglophone Canadian um, space because, well, English America and English Canada are quite connected, whereas French Canada is actually more connected to France and the French left, and is actually the most anti-American. So when the French left, sorry, and in Canada started to see wokeness, they're like, this is an American ideology. We don't want anything to do with it. So the result actually is that in taking classes in French, I've not been subject to a lot of the woke stuff that the people in English have been
Hmm.
subjected to, and I've been able to speak my mind. That said, even in English classes, look, when I started university, I thought I would have to shut up to get a good grade. And honestly, for my first and second year, that's what I did. I just kind of nodded along. I wrote those leftist papers. But coming third
Hmm.
year, I told myself, this is ridiculous. I'm a Canadian. I'm paying thousands of dollars for this education at a public university. Um, I'm not doing this anymore. And in fact, I didn't care if people in the class didn't like me. So I started to voice my opinion. I'm a very pragmatic person. I'm a conservative. When I'm speaking to a conservative podcaster, of course, I'll be a bit fiery. But in my everyday life, I'm a very pragmatic person. So
Yeah.
I just started explaining my views in a very pragmatic way, encompassing I knew what those people cared about, and I tried to explain to them, well, actually, this is why this is important, and I've been doing that. And even more recently, I've defended Charlie Kirk in every single one of my classes, and I've simply, and this has worked very well. I've simply said, look, he's a Christian, I'm a Christian. If you want him dead, you want me dead, and if that's the case, you have a problem. And not a single person has refuted that argument. So, I've had it pretty well. I haven't had any issues. That said, it is a very left-wing place.
Hmm.
And it is easier, 100% easier to be a leftist on a university campus because you get the entire establishment on your side.
Very true. We've spoken about starting conservative chapters because I'm reading this book. I'm not because you're very well versed. I'm not sure if you know Tasha Carradine, so I'm reading this
I'm a
book.
big fan. Tasha and I don't agree on everything, but she's an absolutely lovely woman. I've interviewed her before. I've talked to her on the
She's
phone,
coming on
talked to
my
her in
show too,
person.
dude. Get what? She's
She
coming.
she's absolutely lovely, and if you're watching this, Tasha, I'm a fan.
Amazing. Yeah, look, we could agree to disagree. So I read this book. I'm rereading it because it's so
Yep.
good. And it's made me see, like, I mean, I don't want to spoil it because I say, guys, if you want to get the book, Tasha, I'm giving you a free platform, even though I have Ellie here. Get this on Amazon. It's going to really give you another side of conservatism, of the progressive side, because we're
Mhm.
a big tent, Ellie. But before we
Yes.
get to that, I got to say, we have to start making call CEGEP if you're in Quebec university chapters in for conservatives in Canada. I think we need to start because if we can make like a farm team, the way I look at politics is it's like a hockey team where you have the big league, which is the NHL is the federal, the
Yep.
AHL is the provincial, the municipal is like the junior league college. Well, yeah, I'd say it's like the junior college, and then the university chapters are like the amateur because you have
Yep.
to like really develop your ideas, develop relationships. So I really think what we have to do. We cannot make it like a turning point because that's gonna like irk a lot of people, especially they say, hey, bring Americanism here. We don't want that. We want to make our own version of conservative clubs for Canada. So, is that something that you're trying to help raise awareness for as well? Because I think if we do that, we can really make the next generation with the right ideas and with the right system.
Yes, well, so it's something that I briefly explored after Charlie Kirk died,
Hmm.
horrible death, just to see
Hmm.
if there was interest, and there was a lot of interest. A lot of people messaged me. There was a hunger. Now, I will say a caveat. I think there were a lot of people that were emotionally charged at the time,
They,
and
me included.
so you feel maybe a bit more, a reason why I haven't given any updates is basically you had all of this enthusiasm and it kind of unfortunately died down in
Yeah.
the weeks that followed. Now I do still think that there's an opportunity to build something. I think what Canada needs the most is look, we already have campus clubs on most campuses, conservative campus clubs, and they're very good for bringing people together, for giving people career some career opportunities. But what we need is we need some next level engagement. Jamil Giovanni has been doing a phenomenal job with the Restore the North tour, going out there debating. God bless this man. This man is absolutely amazing. Jamil Giovanni and I go back a couple of years. He helped me with my career. He got me Brian Lilly as a mentor,
Amazing.
who helped me become a commentator. Huge respects for this guy, but what he's doing on campuses is just amazing. But we also need we need conferences for young people. I mean, we the adults get amazing conferences. We put on two or three really good conferences for conservatives every year for all ages. But we need a youth centric conference. Like my absolute dream, and I'm hoping we can accomplish something like this in the next 2 to 3 years, is to do a big conference in a place like Alberta and invite Erica Kirk, invite some of these US people, but also some Canadian people, kind of mix them in and tell young people, like, look, we have all of this amazing conservative talent here. And we need more mentorship programs. We need even like creator funds. Like we need to build like the Conservative Party is very good at building the next generation of conservative staffers. And kudos to them because they need smart people to run their parties.
But we need
But the
candidates.
conservative movement, and this is a mistake that we have made, I believe, as a movement for the last especially the last 10 years, whereas the US have made a different decision, is we've put all our energy into the party. And again, we need the party to be successful. But for the party to be successful, you also need to put some energy into media and into advocacy because they go hand in hand. If the party's talking about an issue, you need independent media to highlight that issue because the CBC and CTV and Global won't. Take Safe Supply. The reason why Pierre Poilievre was able to make this such an effective issue was because of Aaron Gunn, who was an independent journalist who was able to make documentaries. But doing that has to be rewarding. An MP makes $200,000 a year. Whoever is going to make conservative content needs to be making that same amount of money, if not more, because, or else what happens, they all just go and become MPs because, people want it, people that are ambitious want to make money. That's natural. I want to make money. I'm sure most ambitious people want to make money. So we have to create more incentive structures so that the people who want to do conservative media actually stay in conservative media. And if some people want to try elected politics, that's fine as well. And some of the previous commentators like Aaron Gunn and Andrew Lawton, I know that they wanted to run for office. Aaron Gunn had been trying to run for office for a couple of years. I know Andrew Lawton, same thing. So that's fine. But if other people want to stay in media, they should be able to stay in media and make as much, if not more, than what MPs make.
I agree. That's very, very well said. And it's so funny, like how, your mentor was Brian Lilly. I consider Brian a mentor too, because I've had Warren Kinsella on the polar opposite, and Warren was one of my second big interviews. So I started with Senator Leo
Mhm.
Housakos. So Pierre and Senator Leo are the reasons why I got involved with politics because I'm autistic. So for me, it's very hard for me to hold eye contact with autism. Like we all have different
Mhm.
forms of a spectrum. But the Bill S-203 was the reason why I really got involved because I really want to empower neurodivergent. I like to use autistic Canadians. I'm just old school like that because it's like
Yes.
the problem is
And there's
the
nothing wrong with that, you know?
no, but the problem is Ellie, the the liberals like to say, I'm not saying all liberals, but the left vision is, oh, you have this disability, you have to take this welfare because you're a victim to the system.
Yeah.
No, and I'm gonna keep
No.
saying this. I'm a success. Look what my parents did. Like I'm very lucky, but Bill S-203 was gonna give those tools to help those autistic Canadians realize their potential. That's why I voted for Pierre and Leo, and I'm still gonna vote for them. By the way, Senator Leo, you're the best. I'm forever grateful. And then I had Warren on after that, and Warren was amazing. Like he told me right after, he goes, "Hey man," he goes, "keep it up." He goes, "I could see the potential you have because you've done one niche, which is combat sports, and you make that parallel." And he goes, "That's a very genius way of looking at how you're going to be successful." And he goes, "The one
Mm.
thing I can tell you, relationships matter." He goes, "Never
Yes.
pursue the clicks." He goes, "Always pursue the relationships. And if you do that, I have no doubt you're going to be a force." And that meant a lot to me. So if Warren Kinsella, who we don't have to agree with him, you don't have to agree with him at all. The fact that he actually came on and then gave me those kind words, it's a big honor. It's like I'm sure when Brian Lilly took you on, Brian was like, "Man, you're really good too." So it's
Yeah, well, I think Warren, again, I actually like Warren. I've talked to him a couple times just
mm,
on DM. I don't agree with them on a lot, especially on Trump. We probably disagree a lot on that, but I appreciate he's a very level-headed guy,
yes.
very smart, very, very smart man. But you said you touched on something that's important. That is, relationships are more important than clicks. There are so many times where somebody says something absolutely stupid on X, and I feel I really am tempted to reply to their post, and I don't. I very, very, very rarely engage with people on X. Sometimes I'll retweet something, but I very, very rarely do
Mhm.
because I do believe that the relationship is more important than the click. But when I do engage with someone, what I've done in the past actually is then instead of fighting it out in the comments, I'll tell them kind of, let's do an interview, let's do a podcast, let's talk about it.
That's very good. No, that's amazing. So I got to ask you, what is the future for conservatism in Canada? Because I'm
Mm,
very hopeful for the youth. I do believe we're seeing a shift, whereas before the youth used to vote NDP and Liberal, but they're voting conservative. Do you
yes.
see this trend continuing? Because I'm very hopeful for the youth finally.
I am as well. We actually had some very interesting polls in the last election, mostly
Mhm,
by Nanos, because Nanos actually did an age breakdown. And what Nanos was consistently finding throughout the entire campaign is that Gen Z is now the most conservative generation
mhm,
in Canada, more conservative than the boomers. In 2021, it was the other way around. And it was like this for a while. Actually, I remember when Andrew Scheer lost the 2019 election, there were some trolls on Twitter that were making jokes that, oh, well, it's over for the party. The voter base is dying off. They will never win another election because all the young people will never vote for them. And fast forward 5 years later, and the reason why, or 6 years later, geez, time flies, and the Conservatives lost not because of Gen Z, but because of the baby boomers who had traditionally been their base. So I am actually more hopeful than some other people are. I do think the future of the Conservative Party is going to be more conservative. I mean, we talk often about how we don't want to Americanize Canadian politics,
correct.
and I understand the perspective. That said, a lot of young Gen Z people, they're not tuning into CBC. They're not reading the Globe and Mail. They're looking at Daily Wire. They're
They're
looking
getting on
at
their
Rumble.
phones.
They're looking at Brett Cooper. They're tuned into American Gen Z conservative media and creators. So And if you look at how when Charlie Kirk died, the amount of Gen Z Canadians who were so impacted by Charlie Kirk, an American figure. So I do think we're unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, regardless of what you think of this view, it's inevitable that the Canadian conservative movement will start to resemble the American conservative movement a little bit more. And we start to see this a little bit with Pierre on the cultural issues. He's made it, Pierre is not MAGA, and he shouldn't be because MAGA is an American movement. But he has, taken some of this idea that, hey, on culture, let's be a bit more conservative. Let's defend the Canadian identity. And he's been very good on that lately. Michelle Rampel-Garner on the immigration front, very good on that lately. And I think we're going to see more of that because I think Gen Z conservative voters are going to demand more of it. Yes, the economy does bring Gen Z over to the Conservative Party. The fact that we can't afford homes, the fact that inflation's out of control. But Gen Z conservatives care about the culture. We have seen our culture get completely destroyed by the liberals who, say that don't believe that Canada is a common culture. And that's just not true. And so we've seen our country change dramatically over the last 10 years. And a lot of people want to return to a place where we actually have shared values, something that actually unites us. We have a social fabric, a social contract. And I think that matters a lot to people. And it's something that Pierre Poilievre has been talking about. And I think he's going to be talking about more in the next election.
Amazing. Ellie, we did it in 35 minutes, my friend. Where can
That's
people connect?
great.
I know
Amen.
we killed it. Where can people connect with you? And guys, yeah, where do people connect with you? Because you're really
Yes.
an amazing voice. You're so well spoken, and I really
Thank
want
you.
people
Thank you.
to support your
It
work.
means a lot. Well, you can find me at eliecantinnantel.com. So that's ELIECANTINNANTEL.com. I'm on X at ELIE_MCN. And on YouTube, if you type in my name, I highly recommend you check out our new show, Simply Politics. What we're doing is we're taking the what was good with legacy media, which was in-depth investigative journalism, in-depth explainer journalism, and we're adapting it to new media. So we're adapting it to this nice YouTube content, this fun content, so that we can make public policy more attractive. So we're talking about very, very important issues that should matter to every single Canadian. We're doing it in a fun and accessible way, in a youthful way. So do check us out at YouTube, and also be sure to subscribe to the channel that this podcast is on, and let's get you to 1,000 subscribers.
Thank you. Make sure to hit the like, share, subscribe to the Drewsperience on YouTube and all platforms and Instagram too. Ellie, really, I want to thank you a lot. I felt like I made a new friend, and I really hope to see you in Calgary in January.
I will be there. I have my flights booked already, the hotel's booked. I love to cover conventions. I nerd out at conventions, so I will be there.
You'll see me there too. So, guys, make sure to subscribe to his, subscribe to mine. I'm Drewsperience, and this is the future of Canadian, and this man's the future of Canadian politics. Drewsperience out.